Hello, everyone. Welcome to Community Care Play Your Part. We're going to get straight into our introductions.
Yeah, awesome. That's kicking it over to me. I am Rene Joy. I am joining you from Timucua and Seminole Peoples unceded territories in what is now Florida. My pronouns are she, they. I'm a trauma-informed peer support specialist, a community care coordinator, game developer, and I'm neurodivergent. And then Halley, it's time for you.
Hi, I'm Halley Palmer. My pronouns are she, her. I'm joining the stream from the Wampanoag, Pokanoket, and Nauset Peoples unceded territories in Massachusetts. I'm also neurodivergent. I'm a gamer, game designer, streamer with Cast Gamers, and I'm also an LICSW specializing in working with neurodivergent and LGBTQIA+ populations, as well as people with trauma. So thank you so much for joining us. We're gonna cover just a couple little things about the community that we're a part of, the show, and then get into the content of our brand new stream. So Rene and I are members of the community of applied spiritual, therapeutic, and tabletop gamers. This is an amazing community that resides mostly on Discord, but we also have this wonderful Twitch channel, as well as some other social media platforms. And we try to use tabletop gaming or tabletop role-playing games in an applied sense, and to help people heal, help ourselves heal, and just kind of discover more about ourselves. This show, Community Care Play Your Part, is a show where we are developing, testing, and creating games and tools as a way to practice skills necessary to participate in restorative justice and co-create equitable systems of community care. That's a lot of words.
Yeah.
And we're going to break down what that all means. But
Yeah, definitely.
send it to Rene.
Yeah, thank you. And, the reason why we do that is we are answering a call for all individuals and organizing people to to practice restorative work through acknowledging the traditional Native inhabitants of the land they live on, recognizing the nation's systemic racism, and to pursue anti-racism learning through active practice like playing games, and develop awareness of sensitivity and responsiveness to trauma and its impact on a person or a community's identity. And with that in mind, we do have an invitation to just hold for a reflective moment and share a deep breath before we get into the rest of the time. So I'll count to 3 and invite the breath, and then we'll move on. So on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. In. Hold. Out. Okay. I don't know if my nerves have settled yet, but maybe that will help.
If you want me to do this next part, okay.
Yeah. Let me see here. I've just, like I said, I don't know if I settled my nerves, but here we are. Yes. So some of those housekeeping notes for the stream is there may be a lot of atmospheric noises. We may need some bio breaks. And we also may need to be considerate of any mistakes or needs we have while we work our way through our first stream on this. So yeah, and then, right, I especially love our notes here. I will definitely tear up at some point if I haven't already. And what is it? There may be a dog barking in the background as well. Stella may make her presence known, and her need for community care may be made known.
I'll probably need a bathroom break because I drink a lot of soda and water for some reason. I'm sharing some things in the chat right now. We are really trying to center social justice and equitable systems of care, and like just how to decolonize all of the systems that we rely on to like function. And so we welcome you to check out the Truth Be Told campaign, which outlines efforts on using critical race theory, and also check out the nativeland.ca website, where you can find out what Native peoples lived on your land before you did. And you can also take some time to research them and see how you can help. So now, and if you have any ideas of fundraising needs that you have in your community, like feel free to share them in the chat. Like this is like, we're really trying to make this show be about just supporting each other and lifting each other up and just raising awareness about things. So you can use it however you need to. So we are going to get right into it now. The name of our show is Community Care, Play Your Part. We had a lot of fun coming up with a name, but we also have some content too. So Renee, what is community care?
Thank you for asking, Hallie. Yeah, so in the context of social justice, community care is historically rooted in self-care as an act of revolution against systemic anti-Blackness and ableism in America. And then as a practice, it's now embedded in a lot of advocacy and collectivist circles as a way to sustain their mission and care for their members equitably. So we're not creating more harm as we try to dismantle the harm in the systems that be. So yeah, that's the broad view of it. And then I think, this next piece that we talk about is why it matters to both of us. And I can start us off by saying it matters to me because it's the only way to practice a radical level of inclusivity. And it's especially applicable in gaming communities where we're banding together on missions that matter to us a lot, even sometimes thinking it's just for fun. And we can either encounter a lot of harm in some of those situations, or we can encounter a lot of life-changing care. A lot of my most important moments have often come from the communities I'm gaming in. So yeah, like, how does that resonate for you, Hallie?
So for me, like what brought me to so my degree is in social work, and I had like, even as a small child, I had these strong ideas of what was right or wrong, like to the point that it was a little absurd in some cases. Like I would get really frustrated when someone was like, we've served 100,000 people like in your community, like we're the best in the area. And I was like, why would I want to go to you? I'd want to go to the person who like needs help. Like if you which is silly because like you want to get these, like you want to know you're going to get good service and stuff. But for me, it's always been about, despite having like this strong sense of justice at a young age where I didn't even really understand it, the last couple years have really made me have, like, there's been a good old magnifying glass on nonprofit agencies, specifically the one that I was working in, where there wasn't community care despite all of this talk about social justice and diversity and inclusion. And the thing that brought me to it was trying to advocate for a colleague who has ADHD and trying to get them accommodations and getting every wall put up. And as someone who was diagnosed with ADHD in my 30s, so just a couple of years ago, it was the first time that I started thinking of ADHD as a disability, which I have a lot of privilege if it took me that long to get there. And you think you know about these things until you actually experience it. You can like have all of the understanding from books, from critical race theory, from anything about social justice, equity, and inclusion, but it doesn't compare to when you experience it yourself. And that's also how we met too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know
Yeah.
if you want to say a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, we both came to the Cast Gamers Discord server, like looking for opportunities to not only like help people that we worked with as clients, or in my case, peers. We used games as a way to like help them walk through processes with us that we had walked through. But we both needed it for ourselves. We needed to find like a group of people who understood the power of play in the same way that we did, and what it brought out for us. So through that, like, we started to develop more work together, um, especially around how, to do this work requires coming to terms with like the trauma that not only you can receive confronting the systems that be, but also the harm that you can reproduce if you're not aware of how the systems are working through you. And the way that like tabletop role-playing mechanics lay that out in a narrative form makes it so much easier to sort of like see how we can actively and like effectively create interventions in real life in our actual communities, which I think is really where we connected on coming together in a stream centered on using games specifically to explore the impact they have on our learning about our own identities and how we move through creating more equity for those once we learn more, and yeah, how to spread more awareness about it as well. Um, yeah, like did that kind of follow up with your thought a little bit more?
I think so. Like, I do know, like, I remember exactly when we met on the server. So first, like, you had, like, I came into cast after the very first tags summit, so the therapeutic and applied geek and gaming summit, which
Right.
comes up in, I think, June,
Yes.
again, and it was by far the best virtual summit or conference that I had attended in the entirety of the pandemic. It was literally the only good one that I had attended, but it's also filled with geeks and gamers who know
Yes.
how to use technology and know how to use it in interesting ways, and everyone had like deep interest in this. And because it wasn't a huge conference, like there were a couple hundred like people joining, so you could actually talk with the people that you were there with. It wasn't like at something like PAX where there's thousands of people, so you don't really get to go up and talk. And you ran a show on there, but then later we started connecting on the server, on the Cast Gamer server, because of, like, I definitely don't want to talk about your situation without you wanting to, but like for me, we offered we offered support to each other when we were both struggling with our jobs.
Yeah. Yeah.
My situation was like, how do I work with these people who are not understanding what accommodations for someone with ADHD and anxiety look like? Not
Right.
only that, but how does that affect me in case I ever need those accommodations? And why do they not understand how disability law works? Like, this is appalling in a social justice agency. I'm getting activated.
Yeah.
But we were able to connect with each other on similar experiences, and we were also able to play games together too. Like, it just so happened that we were connecting on this server, but I also think that that server just has such a, like, the Cast Gamer server has such a strong sense of connection with one another
Oh
and
yeah.
lift each other up. And yeah, I remember exactly when we met. Your message on the server just came in slowly and everything else blurred out. Saw you from across.
Slowly coming across the field. Yeah. Well, and
um
yeah, that's um well, yeah, that's, I think that moves us into the next topic is, some of what I had seen in how cash gamers navigated like taking care of each other in the act of playing games, um, was so like eye-opening for me in particular, because I had not necessarily experienced that level of care in any of my gaming groups before either. And it really, really drove home what I understood about the benefit of using tabletop role-playing games to try and play out these complications with these like an agency who won't figure out the accommodations. They won't like change their way of doing things to accommodate the needs of others because they just don't see how to do it. I'm like, I'm sure we could just make a game if that would help break open that conversation a little. So
so
there's that piece of it, but then certainly too, like how to actually make it safer at the table for everyone was like a really unexpected need of mine that I didn't even realize I had until I saw how so many of the members of the collective were playing games.
that brings us to our question. Like, the first thing is like how games relate to community care, but specifically, what happens when you don't have community care in games? And like, this isn't just tabletop role-playing games, like we're also talking about the wider gaming community too. But like, so like, Renee, like, what do you see happening when people don't care for their members and make and like provide that the framework for inclusion and just being mindful of one another.
Yeah, like in my previous experiences before I was introduced to anything like the safety tools and stuff that are at play in the group here and in other groups, um, you know, I had encountered just a lot of ists and isms, frankly, in the gaming community. I'd grown up as a kid in the '80s, and my family was very split in their love of D&D at that time. The one half were like, it's awesome and it's amazing and it's fun and it's only for boys. And the other half were like, satanic panic, it's awful and you're a girl, don't play it. So a lot of my like really early fascination with it was squashed. And then um, uh, playing tabletop games in like a conventional sense seemed really scary to me. So I could only manage to do it in online games, and in online communities there was, you know, even more what I would call, like, it felt like a landmine of microaggressions all the time. uh, so uh, you know, the power that a community of gamers has to like really care for each other or really traumatize each other is very real. So yeah, I may have lost some of the
Oh,
clarity in the question. Will you repeat the question? Uh,
well, so I do want to ask you a question. Like, so, do you mind talking a little bit about what kind of games you've played online?
oh yeah,
And
so
like what those isms or ists may have been. Like, not going explicit because like we don't want to traumatize or trigger anyone, but
sure.
like, you know, if we're like, this is the personal matters just as much as the big
Yeah,
picture stuff
well,
too.
and I appreciate the ask for more too, because I do feel it's pretty unique amongst some of the experiences common for tabletop role playing gamers, in that I really needed a nonverbal way to play games because of how overwhelmed I could become in a like verbal exchange with other players, just in case they said something that seemed frankly like I guess, you know, so many tabletop role playing games at that time were focused on combat and violence, and I wanted dynamic story shared with others. And so it seemed easier to navigate the bare minimum violence that existed by at least having it be text based only. So I would play on like really now what are really obscure things called multi-user dungeons and multi-user shared hallucinations that are still up and running now. They're just text-based servers that you dial into like kind of in old-fashioned ways. But they were really a haven for me, and that was some of the only ways in which I could sustain friendship was through those gaming communities. Particularly because at least having a text-based way of communicating caused us to pause before acting out, either in character or out of character too, and it changed how we had to process things. Whereas in a lot of like LARPs or live action tabletop, like at the table, I would just get like steamrolled by other players, either speaking, you know, just being able to be a little quicker on the draw in either what they were saying out of character and in character. So there wasn't a lot of there wasn't a lot of like, well, you have to just figure out how to do what we do. We're not going to change how we do anything just for you. So
And like kind of commanding the space without allowing you to be a part of it.
right, yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because like I don't often include this in like in my gamer resume, but like I started tabletop role playing before I even knew that's what I was doing, because it was
Hmm.
play by post. And so
Oh,
it was very similar, but it wasn't necessarily mush, but it was on a now defunct, it was like kind of like a social media site without being a social media site. It was weird.
uh-huh.
um I don't want to say what it is because I don't want anyone to find it. what I
Right?
said on
There's
there.
a few, yeah, like,
Because
listen,
I
just
was,
calling it a mud or
well,
mush is not gonna tell anybody
yeah.
where, like, the old logs of my role play online are, so.
Oh yeah. And so like I was on a couple forums where we did play by post,
Yeah.
and you know, but like you did, it wasn't like fully, there weren't like huge character sheets, you just did character bios, and then they had like a, every time you added a post to a thing, it would just automatically have code for D20. And so people made like really simple rules around it. I didn't realize it was basically tabletop role-playing games until I was older. Like um and there was, yeah, there I would say I was very lucky with the other gamers that I was playing with.
Mhm.
Generally it wasn't, there wasn't too much that was incredibly concerning except for overly sexualized content.
Ooh,
But we
yeah.
were also teenagers.
Right.
So um but like something that I have seen in like gaming, whether it's video games, tabletop role playing gaming, and I've seen it or experienced it, is just kind of like a lot of gatekeeping, like
Yeah.
like what you were kind of talking about. We're not going to explain it to you. You just need to catch up, or no, this is how you do it, or like you, or being mansplained to. I know that
Mhm.
a lot of cis men don't like hearing that word, but it's a thing. And but there's also been like a lot of other things that have kind of paved the way for us to have these kind of conversations and feel a little bit safer doing it. But like there was a whole Gamergate controversy, and not just controversy, it was hate speech, it was death threats against our Anita Sarkeesian, who had feminist frequency, tropes versus women in video games. An excellent, excellent, excellent show with great content, but there was a lot of racism, sexism, and transphobia, death threats, and sexual assault threats against her, as well as other women in the industry. And it was even worse for folks that were LGBTQ, or like anyone speaking out against this being a problem, which clearly it
Yeah.
is a problem if it got to that extent. Um, and then like not only that, but we've got harmful stereotypes in some of our traditional fantasy based
Yeah.
role-playing games. Thank goodness some of these stereotypes are going the like are being retired, or
Mm.
but the idea of evil races often being races that have darker skin tones, um gender restrictions for classes, ableism, like people, and then a lot of colonialism, as far as the only way to play this game is to be a hero and save people, and you're going to do that through war.
Like loot
uh,
and plunder and yeah.
yeah, which is fun, it can be
Mhm.
fun, but it is a slippery slope to some content that isn't for everyone, to be honest.
So yeah, that was one thing for me. Like a lot of the harmful stereotypes I would find people just like grabbing for to make a narrative easier to just roll out, was often like, okay, like I don't think I'm gonna be safe in this place because I don't want to say those things out of my mouth, or I don't want to like reinforce something even if we are just playing. So that was often something difficult for me. Like I would be you know, I'm someone who, you know, will be called very sensitive or something to that effect, just because I'm like, but I just would like for us to not reinforce something that is so very harmful, you know, especially when it comes to the way that ableism or, you know, disability is often portrayed in games as like a villainous sort of trait, or an indicator of villainy or bad by birth kind of stuff. That was always really, really impactful for me personally.
Mhm.
Was so? Did you ever have a moment in any of those like tabletop games where you were like, okay, this is unreasonable, like where you were kind of getting like personally hit like with one of those stereotypes?
Feel like there was, but I like it was with a group that I do trust and that I do care
Mm-hmm.
about. And so luckily it was a thing that I could kind of stop and like and also it was pretty evenly split men and women too,
Hmm.
and with some LGBTQ folks too. So I think that really helps though. But like the few times that I tried to play tabletop role playing games with like kind of acquaintances, I was like, this is not happening. I just did not feel comfortable, like on one level, because they were so much more advanced with their role playing than me. And I was like, I can't do accents. I am like super shy. No, I am a different person now than I was then.
Yeah.
15-year-old Hallie would not ever imagine herself doing this. So
Mm. Yeah, let me own myself a little bit. Like there were like if I look back at all the characters I've ever played, there were definitely moments where I was like reinforcing a stereotype. Certainly where it comes to like Romani culture, I really uh, didn't understand a lot of that until someone had to really tell me something, it's like to my face about that,
mhm.
about how to not use any aspect of the culture as like cosplay or character dressing. That was really one of those moments that stands out to me now that I'm like, oh, oof, missed that one. Glad I've learned now though.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you brought that up, because like I'm wondering, how did they bring it up to you, and
Yeah.
how did you take it? How, like, because I think that that's not what's talked enough about, is like
Hmm.
when you're called out,
Yeah.
how you react, because a lot of people will react very defensively and it shuts the conversation down and it's really hard to move forward and it
Right.
can break a group. That's an
Right.
example of no community care. So like
Right.
how did they
Exactly.
bring it up to you and what happened?
So this one's so long ago at this point now, that I'm not sure I remember all of the details that would like really give out that language around community care. But I can say again, it was on a text-based game. So the nonverbal delivery of information sort of not neutralizes it. I mean, you can take text in a wrong tone and be very activated by text no matter what. But the way that they could just share a link that had all of the language that they would want me to know about made it a lot easier, I think, to present me with what I needed to know, and then for me to be able to like receive it and know it. But that's unique to the situation. That's labor on the other person's part, and then that's me feeling safe because it's a nonverbal situation. So there's some aspects there that weren't as challenging as it might be in other situations. Like if that had been a situation where I was playing around a table and someone had confronted me with a need to like open my eyes to what was going on, I don't know that I would have been as like in a receiving mode, given the way that I can quickly become overwhelmed by my fear of not doing something right, or appearing imperfect or whatever that might be. So yeah, we were able to continue playing. I On these games, switching out characters for a new character was really easy to do. It doesn't normally impact like a campaign as it might around a table where the characters you're drawing up are a little more fixed. I think this is where I'm not as practiced at the tabletop. I know you typically have the one character you make and then you might have an alternate, but yeah, that's something where I think if I'm in the pressure of this is the only character I have to play, that might have clouded my ability to really hear the other person instead of getting defensive.
So you said that it sounded like they were able to provide you with some literature to help you
Yeah,
understand the situation.
I I love literature, so it's that was something that connected well with what works for me. So yeah, again, that was kind of like a benefit of the moment or a benefit of the circumstances.
Yeah,
Had they not offered literature and just spoke of their own experience, I don't know that I would have respected it as much, which is an unfortunate kind of, admittance to make of myself at that time.
well, I mean, we can't, you only know what you know
Yeah.
first. But I think that you were, the other person was kind enough to provide that extra
Yeah.
information, that context for you, which
Well,
like not everyone is able to do or willing to do, and we can't
yeah.
expect that because it's on us to do this work.
Hmm.
Um, but having said, like I feel like we definitely covered a lot on like what what's going on when there isn't community care, what are the dangers, I would say that like if you've ever had a group that kind of fell apart, it's very possible that some of it could have been related to there just not being safety at the table.
Yeah.
Um, that's not always the case. Like, I mean, we had a pandemic. Oftentimes people have lives and things happen in them that make it they can't game. But a lot of times like games fall apart because you're not able to meet everyone's needs. But having said that, what happens when you do have community care in games? What does that look like?
Well, so I have a like the off the cuff answer, but I'm actually really intrigued to know a little more formally where some of those actual safety tools came from that you guys have been using. That they seem community wide, not just specific to the cast gamers use of them, but I guess I'm really interested in how you know about the safety tools and other things that are in
This is
use.
like the one thing we didn't prep for, Renee.
I don't know.
I
Just
wish we
winging
had.
it.
So, dang it, I wish I had all of those links. So,
Mm,
like anyone who's watching, if you know where some of these came from, please put it in. I will look it up and I'll like post
yeah,
it somewhere. And I know that I have that information somewhere in my brain or my Google Drive. But
yeah.
safety tools were, oh, I think we got a thing on Discord, maybe. I think someone may have said a thing, maybe. Oh, no,
Nope.
just
No such
kidding.
luck.
I'm
It's
making
fine.
things up. Um,
I'll try and
so
look at something while you're
there's
talking.
lines and veils. I learned about it from Thirsty Sword Lesbians, but I
Mm,
think that it existed before then, and I'd have to grab my book. And then there's also script change, which
mm,
to Neil, aka Wordsmith, just put in the chat. There's script change, which uses like the play, pause, fast forward, rewind information that you would use for movies. And then I think Kayla put the X card comes from John that name
Stavropoulos?
Stavropoulos. Yes. There's a clip for us for later.
Yeah.
Halley saying a word. And Kayla is being wonderful and putting some
Thanks.
links in the chat. Thank you so much,
Love a
Kayla.
supportive chat.
I love it so much.
Thanks for the community care,
Renee,
guys.
why did you bring up these questions?
I
We have
know.
control of the
I'm
show. um,
just asking
so
questions. Who knows what they mean? So,
yeah, and I'm sure I could find it, but I also know that my typing is very loud. Thank you so much, you guys. It's Distracted Monk. This is my first introduction to it. It's a YouTube video of safety tools in Critical Role. Thank
oh,
you.
awesome.
There's also the open door policy, which I think typically would mean like that you can come and go as you please, that you
Right.
also can take space when you need. And yeah, you guys are great. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. And but I think that where a lot of these safety tools came from is experiences like we've had, but maybe even like significantly worse.
Yeah.
Like we are two white AFAB ladies, and so like there's only so much that we can understand and wrap our minds around and really know. Like we can be aware of things, but we're not going to know all of the things that are happening for other people. And I think that there's been a really deep need for people to be able to engage in their hobbies and
Yeah.
know that there's at least an airbag for them, like
Yeah.
something that's going to keep them safe. It doesn't always work though. Like harm can still be done, even with lines and veils, safety tools, X cards, script change. Harm can be done, but oftentimes safety tools also provide, I think, a way forward,
Yeah.
like a way to like recognize the harm and like move forward if possible, if there's enough goodwill built in that community, because a small tabletop group is also a community.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think like the act of even offering safety tools and establishing that there is an inherent risk in playing a game together, that like just because we're all here to have fun, we have different definitions of fun, or fun impacts us in different ways. So Right. So I'm just really grateful that the uh, tabletop gaming community has come up with these things over time, and that we have such a like wealth of tools to put into play when we're playing now. So is there like, of the safety tools that you've used, is there one that is like your absolute favorite that you trot out every game? Is it like the lines and veils? Is that really common knowledge that you find everybody kind of gets now?
I think for me, the ones that have been the most used in the games that I've been playing has been Lines and Veils. I think that um I think that we want to say that we're going to use X cards and stuff,
Mhm.
but in my experience, I think I'm also really fortunate to be playing with such amazing people too. So like
Yeah.
maybe some of this stuff hasn't had to be brought up. I've
Mhm.
literally only had to pause and rewind to redo a scene kind of like
Mhm.
once. And it was in a game, it was in Snack Attack, which is a honey heist game. And it was a very small thing. And that was just, and it was for something for me, just because I was like, you know what? I just don't want us to go there because like I don't know what it's gonna bring up for me and I don't want to put that on everyone else either. So
Mhm.
lines and veils is nice because at the very beginning you identify what your lines are and what you're willing to have be in the game, but you're not going to be like shining a spotlight on it. It might be there and there might be themes of it, but it's not like we're describing a whole scene of assault or something, like
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
that doesn't sound like a fun game to me. I'm I'm wondering, Renee, um, you talked about like when you first came into cast and like being introduced to these tools. So can you tell us a little bit about what that was like for you
Yeah,
or
I
what
think,
game it might have been or
well, I think I was watching one of the Friday night streams, and I probably saw language around the server about this, but then watching it like kind of in action on a stream really, put it into context for me. And uh, yeah, like, and then I think later on, you and I and Tennille were able to play a game, like one of the first tabletop games that what was it? Something with the
the
grannies.
it might have been the grannies
I
or it
can't
was
think of the name.
Mesopotamia. No, I think it was yeah, lewd grannies.
Lewd Grannies.
We will find a link for that and put it in the thing.
Right, that was
um
one of my first. And really exploring like what lines and veils look like for each of us showed me the how big of a value it is. I mean, I'm really used to this kind of language in a peer support setting, where we're managing mental health crises and what is acceptable to offer to the person in crisis according to their needs and what they've self-identified as, what their valuable and safe like pieces of equipment or attributes, or those people that they want to call in for. So I'm really familiar with this concept of like, this is like absolutely never do this and absolutely always do this in order to help me or in order to help me feel safe about something. um, so to see it applied in the gaming, in a gaming setting, made me immediately feel a lot safer about trying to play the games, because that's often what I need to be communicating in the moment. I see that, um, Tennille shared with us about how an X card works, which is, yeah, you may not know all of your triggers until it actually happens. So having a prompt at the beginning like that to get my brain working will help me recognize later on if I've missed something that I needed to be a more either upfront about, or just didn't even understand I needed in the first place. Um, so yeah, like I think those are the only times I've been able to put them into play too, is the games that we've played on the server. And then um, yeah, I think, has there been like a time where you've expressed a line or a veil that the DM or the GM forgot or ignored, or
luckily no.
mm,
Um not in any of the games where we actually use the safety tools.
Hmm.
But like there was one thing in like Snack Attack, and basically like, so you play raccoons and you are breaking into a raccoon cafe to get all the snacks. So it seems like a really silly game, but even in a game like that, like, so I have had a number of pregnancy losses over the last couple of years, and like I didn't think much of it, and I was the GM for the game too, so I was running it. However, someone brought up getting, like, if you're an animal, like getting spayed or neutered, and I was just like, you know what, no thank you, we're gonna back up. And it didn't even go, it was like in a funny way, and like they were being like total, like, and because it wasn't my game that I was playing in, I hadn't put anything about that in the lines and veils, but I was like,
Hmm.
it could be a little sketchy for me. And they were super awesome, it was great, and like, we just kind of backtracked a little bit and continued on with the mayhem of
Hmm.
stealing from a raccoon cafe. um but I have not had, the only times where someone might have, like, not necessarily been very thoughtful in a game about this kind of stuff was in like a game with some of my friends in real life, or like in
Hmm.
person.
Right.
But I did want to, like echoing what you were saying, the tools that you've used in your peer support work.
Hmm.
It, like, I'm just amazed at how much overlap there has been between your work and my work. Because like I was a intensive care coordinator, and so we had to
Hmm.
come up with safety plans for our clients, which as a therapist you should do that too. And we also had guidelines for our meetings, like what was allowed,
Hmm.
what wasn't allowed. Those things were always, the people following them, those guidelines was inconsistent at best, but
Hmm.
at least they were thinking of it, I guess. But I think that it's really great when there's an actual social contract,
Yeah.
like, because you can't know that you're gonna upset people, and you can't know what the norms are in a group if they're not really explicit
Yeah.
sometimes, or if there isn't at least enough safety there to make them explicit.
Hmm.
But I think, um, did I answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. And I think too, like we're exploring, like I think we were trying to explore what happens when we do receive good community care in a setting, but we were kind of drifting back into like what happens when it's not there, because it's so much more common for there not to be like explicit language around caring for one another at the table, or playing characters that are extensions of ourselves in a way that doesn't like dissociate us from our humanity. So I don't know what I just said, but I said a thing.
It's not a good, um, like, well, I think it's important to understand, like, you might be choosing, like, let's say you're just playing D&D. You're coming up with a character, maybe your group is really into the role play. Most of the groups that I play D&D in are into role playing, and yeah, we're gonna have to come back to what Distracted Monk said in the thing.
Yeah.
But you can try to make a character as different from you as possible, and you can try to understand that all of the other people at your table, virtual or physical, are playing their characters, not actually acting that way. But you cannot remove yourself from your character in a game. Like, you are still there, your feelings, your experiences, your biases are all still there regardless. And like, I know I've had a lot of, like, I feel like we should kind of move into talking about like how video, or not video games, tabletop role-playing games can help you with self-exploration,
Yeah.
but also that there are different types of games that you can play that aren't all centered around combat,
Right.
or being a hero. So for me, I have been lucky enough, uh, I've always done a little exploration in games before, but like, I like in the server, the Cast Gamers community, um, we I feel like everyone's very intentional about the playbook or the
Right.
archetype that they choose.
Yeah.
And so I have been able to explore what it means to be neurodivergent
Mhm.
through my character in Thirsty Sword Lesbians. They were called The Mask, but she was an android. And at first I was really worried that I was like co-opting like trans or gay experience, like having a mask and like masking who you are and not being honest about who you are with other people, exploring that kind of thing. But I was like, shoot, I'm actually exploring what it means to be neurodivergent for me. Because like I was trying to be very aware of what it could look like and what other people might experience. And I was like, oh, I am using it the way that they kind of say for the mask,
Yeah.
but it was for this other thing that I was like a little oblivious to at first, which
Mhm.
is very ADHD. And I also explored like that through my character Max and Wander Home, which our friend Kayla ran my first Wander Home game with. And Max was just a dog, a mutt, and really excited about everyone. All like loved just helping out with friends and getting distracted by smells. And I basically wanted to, if I could be any animal, it would be a dog and just be really excited about things all the time. Um, and just really unmasking, like
Yeah.
trying to be that person that I would love to be all the time. Uh Max was so except for when he was nervous once. Um Renee, have you been able to like get anything like that for you in any of the games that you
Yeah.
played?
That, there was that solo journaling game, the where we played as the Fae,
Oh,
or as a
I
change
why
the
did
change.
I Strange Changeling Child. That was my
Yes.
actress.
There was something in that game where it was prompting a conversation between yourself and like a family member, where you're trying to disclose your neurodivergency to them, and what reaction they would have. And the way that the dice rolled out was, it was it was very it didn't what I think, what it struck me is that the dice didn't roll something out that was strange to me. It was very familiar. It played out exactly as it had played out in my life. So I wasn't necessarily exploring a different aspect of my experience. I was just seeing it like play out in a like magical realism narrative. And it like was so much more potent in the way it affirmed the pain that I had. So it wasn't necessarily that my identity was affirmed and I felt good about it. It was just being allowed to actually have the pain felt good, which I know in for many of those who might know me, that might not seem like such a strange statement, but like that's just what it was. It felt really great to be allowed to just feel what I felt about the situation, and to have a process to follow in order to feel that way.
I talked about that game. So Strange Changeling Child for everyone watching. I put the link in the chat.
Mhm.
You play as a changeling, and changeling in this sense, so Lexi the Fae, the person who wrote the game, is autistic, and so this was a way for them to explore being autistic in the game. And it's a solo journaling game, but we played it as a group, Renee and I, as well as a couple other friends, and all of us identified as neurodivergent. So it's ideal for folks that are autistic, but it really resonated with me as someone who's ADHD as well. And I think that it could resonate with people in a lot of other ways, like whether you need to come out like as trans or gay or just like there's just so many applications, but it's important to recognize that it was meant to help folks with exploring their being autistic. um I have shivers right now remembering the game,
Mhm.
and like you said, it brought up some pain.
Yeah.
It wasn't like we ended that game with like excitement or joy, unless like you
Right.
had like unless you were fully accepted or one of the other people that was one of your supports or folks if they came out as a changeling as well, like that could be like a really positive moment. But I think only one or two of us did, and I was not one of them.
No,
and
yeah.
and I had like two people who tried to accept me as I was, and one who was like, I can't, not thanks.
Right.
And it really, it echoed some of my relationships.
Yeah, like I really felt that echo from mine as well, for one of the scenarios that had played out like that, which is it's so much more common, I think, in our uh, non-gaming communities, especially to not be accepted as we are. um, there's so much about the gaming community, like the tabletop role-playing gaming community, that because we're often shifting characters and trying on different roles and ready to roll some dice and see what happens, there's a greater level of inclusivity possible, with all of that activity. So I think that's what keeps bringing me back too. Uh, the the aspect of having a game between myself and another person often relaxes me, about all of the other things I think I'm supposed to be doing in that moment with them, socially speaking. So it's often one of my go-to ways to just plain talk about anything, which is maybe
Yeah.
why I'm a little awkward in this, because we don't have a game between us, which we mentioned. We're like,
No,
wait.
we knew we wouldn't like have the time for a game in this first one. We needed to
Yeah,
like really, but like I will say um like another game for me that was great, and I would like to like talk a little bit about games, because before
yeah,
we finish we are going to talk about what games we are going to play in the stream
yeah.
that help us explore community care, self-care, like so just how to just care for people, including ourselves. But I had another powerful experience playing Our Haunt by Ray Najati,
Mm,
who is the creator, founder, CEO of Sword Queen Games. I think that's the name of their thing. But we got to play it on cast. I'm sure we can get a link to the stream from YouTube in the channel or in the thing. But I chose the doll playbook. And it's definitely, once again, it was another one that was meant probably to help folks who are dealing with body dysmorphia related to being trans. But for
mm,
me, having had my pregnancy losses, and I also had to have a couple surgeries related to that, I was really hating my body, like just really unhappy with it. And in a live stream, like a one-shot live stream with the creator of the game, like I was provided this space to like that would with people that I trust and that I care about, that also helped create this wonderful space. And we were all able to explore different things. And not only that, but like I already knew that they were my friends like outside of the game, but their
mm,
characters also created support in the game, whether it was for me or we did it for someone else. And it was just, we were talking about that for days. And
mm,
I was like a little on edge because the doll was not a playbook that I would ever have chosen if I wasn't with a group of people that intentionally plays games
mm.
and like makes it known that they care about you. Like, ah, you guys are great. Ah. So like Renee, do you is there anything else you wanted to say? Oh, like yeah, how about you talk about a little bit about the mega bundles that we've all been getting? Because
Oh
this is related
yeah,
to community care, you guys. It is.
right.
Um,
So right. Well, the itch.io, it's itch.io. I keep saying
I always call
itch.io
it itch or just
or itch.
itch.io, but other people say itch.io. Tell us in the comments what you prefer.
I like itch.io. It's cute. It feels cute, so I like it. But yeah, that's been just in terms of looking for examples of community care in the wild. The way that the tabletop role playing game community is really rallied around community needs relevant to like trans rights in Texas and the war in Ukraine. Not only are they just putting a bunch of fun games to play together, but the majority of the games really explore the aspect of building community and sustaining community through adverse experiences, whether because people are struggling to stay together or the world is tearing them apart. And so also embedded in so many of the mega bundles are incredible essays from members of the role-playing game community about how about how to play the game safely, and about what happens when we're playing the games together with intention, and the healing and the recovery that these stories bring us. And yeah, I'm just so like blown away so often by the like role-playing gaming community, especially. I think, again, going back to like how often we're willing to like explore aspects of ourselves and our humanity, naturally kind of, I think, draws out the way that we build connection and community together. So uh yeah, the way that there's been these massive bundles, massive fundraising, and then what's actually in the bundles really plays into uh, why it's important for us to really um, tighten the lens, tighten the focus on being safe at the table, and using, really tapping into the power of play beyond just getting together, have fun, but really spreading that joy into our communities at large.
I think like I did post the links to the bundle for Ukraine and the TTRPG for trans rights in Texas. I think between those two, you get like something like 700 to 1,000
It's a lot.
TTRPGs.
Yeah.
And there is a couple games that are also like video games too. So, and there's another one coming out soon. And I just like, it's a lot. Like I've definitely bought some of these games like 12 times, but because it's like I think one of those bundles is $5. It's like
Mhm.
ridiculous. And like obviously please offer more, because like designers and creators are putting up their creative work to help other people.
Yeah, and oh, sorry, I didn't mean,
Oh, you go.
thank you. I was just gonna cut in to say too that, I come largely, rather than from like uh, as a practitioner, I don't necessarily come from like an agency background. It's usually more grassroots and organizing based. And I wish more organizers and advocates understood how applicable so many of these games are, how easy they are to just pick up. We hear role-playing games, we automatically think of D&D, D20 system, like I mentioned role-playing games to somebody in one of my advocacy circles. That was her immediate connection. She was like, yeah, people only like that if they like math. And I'm like, no, there's so
Hate
many other
math.
ways. Yeah.
um
There's so many other ways. And so I really hope that we can bridge some gaps between advocacy and activism oriented communities with the active play, because these games are amazing ways to like organize together and practice stuff, but also really wonderful ways to conceive of one another in relationship to projects you share and stuff like that.
yeah, you've been on a gamifying kick lately.
Yeah,
uh
huge.
we've been working to like help create some systems for cast gamers, like to just make it like sustainable into the future, and to spread the work around so that it's not just two people doing all the work. Like, and Renee is on a let's gamify it. Like,
Yeah. Like what if the whole thing were an RPG?
what if it
Can
was
we
a
do it?
game?
Bless y'all for entertaining it.
So can you tell us a little, so like, wow, we thought we were going to talk for way longer, first of all, because we
Oh
are.
no, are we that far down on our uh-oh.
Huh? Yeah, like we're to the end
Oh
of our
boy.
thing, but like I don't want us to just to like throw in content to throw in content, obviously.
No.
Yeah, we still have another, we could have a whole other hour. But so we could have put a game in. Let's play one right now. I was gonna say, Renee, tell us a little bit about, so let's like give like a little montage of what we plan to do for our show. It's the third Thursday of every month at 8 p.m. Eastern for 1.5 to 2 hours. We're not just going to be talking about theory or games the whole time. So,
Mhm.
Renee, what are some of the things that we're going to be doing?
Yes. So, a couple of things. We're going to be actually playing games starting next episode and happening in April, the third Thursday of April. And so, the other thing we're going to be doing is like working on systems agnostic tools that kind of reflect the things we've been talking about, that help us like package safety tools for character creation and character play. And then also making like player safety plans for GMs to better know how to support their community of players, for players to know better how to like ask for what they need or listen to the needs of another person. And then we'll be using those alongside the games that we actually play too. Yeah, and that's where I'm really depending on you, Hallie, the members in our chat, and the members of the Discord server to throw out all of those games. I have a folder of hundreds of them at this point, just from the mega bundles alone. But I'm really excited to, use any of the games that can help us in this work and explore them live on stream. So I think, yeah, like do you want to chime in on any of those systems agnostic tools we talked about before we talk about some of those games we might play?
So first, Tennille's very curious about, I think, the games that we're gonna play and stuff.
Yeah.
So Renee and I started creating a system agnostic tool that hopefully you can utilize in any game to help promote awareness of privilege, bias, worldview, when you're playing a game. And so Renee has dubbed this the care actor sheet, which is like a really cute name, baby. And so
you know me and my name babies.
and so the care actors sheet, on a unmedicated ADHD day, we both sat down and came up with all the ideas, and we are going to try it in when we're playing the games that we choose, and we're gonna like, that's our play test version.
Yeah.
But we also were coming up with a safety plan too, like a safety plan for in-game. But we're also kind of like trying to figure out what is the difference between a character sheet and a safety plan, and could they be the same thing, or is our safety tools what we need
Mm-hmm.
with the character sheet? So, and it's possible that we're just coming up with something that no one will ever want to use, but we're going to use it and see if it
I need
works.
it. Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, as far as I'm concerned, like these are things that I need. So there's certainly why I'm creating them. And then I would hope that anybody else who might see a need for it for themselves would be able to either use it or adapt their own out of it.
So like what we have so far, if I remember correctly, on our character sheet is we've got different areas for what is your primary identity. And so this is like, what is the first identity that you identify? Like if someone were to ask you who you are, what's the first thing that you usually say? And it doesn't have to just be one thing. Maybe it's two things, like maybe I'm an ADHD woman. I don't know.
Mhm.
Or 80 like white ADHD woman. But then there's also your additional identities, because you're never just one thing, but there is one overarching thing typically for everyone, and that often varies based on race, class, abilities, gender, all of the things. And so it's kind of like, what if people knew one thing about you, what did you want them to know?
Yeah,
And
and I think
sometimes you don't have any control over that.
well, and yeah, like it taps into like what you believe, what the character believes about themselves, to like the story they tell themselves about
Mhm.
themselves and what your what that reveals about them.
Yeah. And so we
Um,
also includes areas like, what communities are you part of? And it's also supposed to, um, like, you should be able to build upon it as you discover what your biases or your character's biases turn out to be. Cause like,
yeah.
this is an ongoing, like, self-reflection and understanding who you are and what your identity is an ongoing process. And I think that a lot of people have, especially people that are white, have really struggled with this for the
Mm.
last several years. I mean, I think they've always struggled, but like, we're going to try to provide some language for how you can do this for yourself and for your characters.
And I would say,
Um,
yeah, like some of that concept of the character sheet arose out of what's happening in the community already. A lot of players tend to take time, not just to write backstory so that they've got the stats on their character sheet right, but like I've seen a lot of conversation about DMs making like index cards of questionnaires to get their players really thinking, so that play is more immersive and more enriched when they're actually at the table, so that players have a better understanding of what their character might say or do in a moment to support what the dice are rolling. And then, you know, watching the streams that are put on by Cast Gamers where you spend time reflecting on how your characters process or play impacts you. What are you going to take away from that for the week? And that sort of like feedback loop that you can have if you're playing with intention.
and so to answer your questions, to Neil, and also if anyone has questions, now is a great time to start putting them in the chat.
Yeah.
We have a number of games that we know that we're going to play. So we've got these are really community-centered games. The Quiet Year by Avery Alder. And I'm gonna post a link to there, which we were like really tired when we updated our
I was
rent
going to say,
stream.
I don't know if, yeah, I don't want to put us, have the pressure on us to post a link for every single thing in the moment. But we
Yes,
can also like
no,
follow up. Well, this is where I know, I wish we were also like a blog to match. If there was a blog to match, I would be
we're
posting the
gonna get
transcript and
there.
all the links, all the things.
Kayla says she's got the links. So
Awesome.
then we've also got Be My Neighbor, which
Yeah.
can you give a blurb about Be My Neighbor?
So this is something, this is a game where in the creation of community care play your part, there's also some ideas we have of original games to create for our own needs. And a game that I had suggested was Call for Help, which is based around how to help somebody experiencing a crisis in the neighborhood. But this game that was in one of the mega bundles called Be My Neighbor plays on that aspect. It expands on it and is a completely different kind of mechanic than I was thinking of. But in terms of the subject matter it covers, it's already covering a lot of like how to help navigate crisis or conflict in a community setting.
Awesome. And then we have For the Queen.
Mm.
This is a game played with a deck of cards, and I think I had thought that I was buying it, and then I apparently didn't buy it. I apparently controlled my impulses. But For the Queen, this is um, it. Thank you so much for putting that in. And yeah, it's a card-based story building game. And you're gonna choose your queen from among 14 illustrations, or start from scratch. And there are prompt cards that help you collaboratively tell the story. And I think that, like, you know, depending on who you're playing with and what happens in the game, you have a ton of different endings. And you had chosen this one specifically for one of the other games too, I think, that you wanted to create.
Right. So I think this was the game we had said might be like the most hackable system for a call for help kind of concept, given how the mechanics, um, how they work. In the call for help scenario, you know, a person who is in need of help has specific rules about who to call and who not to call. And if you've committed to helping them according to what they say, you're faced with a choice, you know, like, I want to call the cops to help us with this crisis. They told me not to. What do I do? So I think some of the mechanics of For the Queen test those like lines of loyalty, I guess, in moments of crisis.
And then another game that we plan to use is Dream Askew.
Mm,
And Dream Askew is a belonging outside belonging game.
mhm.
Um, and I think we were planning on using Dream Askew to work on Neurocosmopolis. Is that,
Yeah.
yeah, so Neurocosmopolis is a way to, we're hoping when we create it, which I think, like, after having a couple delicious New England IPAs, I was like, Renee, before I forget and go to bed,
Yeah.
these are my ideas for the game Neurocosmopolis. And I'm so glad I did that because I completely forgot that I sent it to you. Um,
Yeah.
but it was about, I think it was about exploring what your neurotype is and
Yeah.
how your neurotype affects how you interact with the world. But I'm sure you have more information because you're the one who's been
Yeah.
writing all our things.
So with Neurocosmopolis, it explores neurodiversity in a like a collective sense. So it's we understand neurotypicality to mean like what we think of as a normal way of functioning. But in this game, it would show that that typicality shifts depending on who's in the group. You can have an ambient typicality if it's just you and three other people and you're all really closely connected neurokin. You have a collective typicality that someone else entering that group may be challenged by or may disrupt in ways that are potentially uncomfortable or maybe enlightening. So it explores neurodiversity off the scale is kind of how I'm trying to phrase it, like off the larger kind of binary scale and more about like just what happens in smaller groups of people. And a lot of that, I explore a lot of that concept through some of the work by Dr. Kimberly Douglas's Decolonizing Neurodivergence, where it's asking us to like break away from a scale and consider it in like neuro distinctions in different pockets and things like that. So I'm really excited by any games that help us build mechanics around that. And I think was there Kayla shared something, I think an avatar supplement, I believe, around like balance. Also, I can't remember now. I'm hopeful that with Kayla listening, they'll be able to like pop it in the chat for us. But yeah, there's so many games that can help with that particular mechanic.
We've just been like identifying more and more games. So if you have any ideas of
Yeah,
games that we can either play on stream to help explore how it can be used for community care, whether for one person or for a whole group, or
yeah.
to raise awareness and understanding between people about
Hmm.
what people are going through, please feel free to send it to us. You can put it in the chat. We also have the Cast Gamers thing, and I think that like a thingy went up on the screen saying how you can contact us and stuff. Like so fancy. I love it.
Right.
Um, so I think like we covered a lot of our stuff. Like
Yeah.
wow. But yeah, like we have some big plans for this. We hope to have guests on the show. We hope
Yeah.
to um just be able to, and then like just the whole idea that we're going to be creating games is like blowing my mind.
Yeah.
Um
And if you know anyone who'd like to come and play with us, we welcome players from the community as well.
Let us know if you want to join. um and we'll give you some like our information in just a little bit about how you can do that. I'm wondering, like, is there anything else that you wanted to say before we start wrapping up?
I really can't think of it, but it may just be the first night nerves, blank in the brain. But yeah, I'm just again really appreciative of the work that this collective encourages us all to like gather around. So thank you for joining me on this stream tonight, Holly. I really appreciate your
Oh,
accountability with me on this.
thank you for like being okay with me joining. And I'm like, I don't know what we're doing, but sure. I can like I'll be a pretty face on the screen if you want, or I'll try to have more information. Do you want to like do the little how to participate and then I'll do our announcements?
Sure. Yes. So we shared earlier in the stream, and I'll share again, to check out nativeland.ca and learn about the people whose land you live on. We can honor their stewardship and rights, first through acknowledgement than through action. So consider connecting with local representatives of Indigenous people to learn more about what you can do to support them near you. And then you can come play your part with us too. So you can reach out to us on the Cast Gamers Twitter. That's CASTT_gamers. You can reach me on Twitter at Renee Joy Writes. And then you can reach Halley at Hallosaurus Rex. And yeah, I look forward to connecting more with everybody.
If you are interested in things that you saw tonight and like the things that Cast Gamers does sounds like something you want to watch more of or be a part of, we have a number of streams coming up. So Friday Night Cast, that is one of our tabletop RPG streams. Their next episode is, I put that it's tonight. It's definitely not tonight. It's tomorrow night, Friday the 18th, starting at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard. They are playing Wander Home. And then we've got tabletop transformations with our lovely friends Menachem and Tanya. They have their stream, I think it is the fourth Thursday of every month, and that is at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard. I'm just doing Eastern because that's where Renee and I are, but I'm sure a lot of you are elsewhere. But they explore how to utilize tabletop role-playing games for spiritual needs and to explore what they would like through a religious sense or a spiritual sense. And then the next Gaze of Our Lives stream, which sometimes you can find me on, is going to be on March 27th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And they're playing Exodus, which is about angels in a dystopian wasteland going on a road trip. I'm sure there's definitely way more to it, but I am behind on episodes. So that's how much I can say about it. There's a number of partners that we support directly. Well, directly as in like we're going to shout out for them because they're amazing and you should check them out. Yeah. Geek Therapy, they have a wonderful, active and vibrant Discord server, and they're one of the people that helps put together the whole TAGS summit. So Therapeutic Applied Geek and Gaming Summit, which is in June. You can go to geektherapy.org. There's also the Bodana Group. They are a nonprofit organization as well that utilizes tabletop role-playing games and board games when working with people and helping them meet goals and stuff. And we've also been collaborating more often with the Real Women of Gaming. You do not have to be a woman. You do not have to be AFAB to be able to enjoy what they do or to be on any of their streams or their work. They are very active in the gaming space, whether it's video games or tabletop role playing. And you can also find me on the first and third Saturday of each month at 6 p.m. on their show Tankards, Treasures and Tales, or Tankards, Tales and Treasures. There's 3 T's and those are the words that go with it. And that's at the Real One of Gaming Twitch channel. Oh, so many things. Whew. So we have a number of thank yous. First and foremost, thank you so much, Kayla, for running the back end of things, making everything look really pretty and coming up with all of our wonderful promotional materials. Thank you to Kayla and Dustin for sharing your knowledge on these topics and helping provide information and guidance. I don't know if you would like to.
Sure. Yeah. And yeah, thank you again to the Cast Collective for opening up some stream space for me to invite Halley and others to talk about these topics and play around these topics with me. And thank you to all the viewers for joining us and for being very gracious and kind on our first night of nerves. I really appreciate it. And yeah.
Thank you all. If you have any suggestions for what we can do, feel free to email us. But otherwise, have a wonderful Thursday night. And apparently it's St. Patrick's Day. So if you celebrate, happy St. Patrick's Day.